students that just didn't show up so often that it made it very almost impossible, you know. All right, so we're gonna be taking a lot of notes, full session today. I'll see how long I can get in. Okay, but we're gonna start off class here with the question that's on the board, and I will. Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday to you. We're going to start off class with a quick question. So those of you on Zoom need to get your brains going right away. So I'm going to share the screen here in a second. Is that better? Yeah. Yes, it's better. Might not be up to your standards, but it's better. All right, so here we go. Lucy, nice hat. Festive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you see the question on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so one important similarity between the American Revolution and the French Revolution is that they both, A, challenged monarchical governments, B, resulted in the abolition of slavery, C, resulted in the abolition of class divisions in society, or D, enabled women to achieve political equality with men. So those of you on Zoom, put your correct answers here, please, in the chat function, A, B, C, or D. In person, if you think it is A, raise your hand. Okay, if you think it's B, raise your hand. If you think it's C, raise your hand. If you think it's D, raise your hand. Okay, we have a tight vote here. Let's see where we ended up on the computer here. Oh, we got a lot of A's. That's good. We had all A's in class here as well, as the correct answer is A. So B we know is not true because the Civil War was fought 1861 to 1865 to end slavery. C we know is not correct because we're still dealing with that issue in our own country to this day. And D, women wouldn't gain the right to vote till in most countries till after World War I. Okay, so there we go. All right. On that note, though, we are going to, I'm going to hide that so that it's not there for next period. And we're going to start off here with some notes, ideas, pictures. You can follow along as you want to, fill out what you want to. I mean, I really just need you to actually be engaged. So those of you that play around on your phone in class, I can't imagine what you're doing at home. So, yeah. Make that bigger. All right, so last week in our story of the French Revolution, we ended with Robespierre killing himself, shooting himself in the face, being guillotined, and then a 5-man directory was then created from the Jacobin political club, and this 5-man directory ruled for 5 years while France was still fighting wars against Austria, Prussia, and Great Britain. And at the same time this is going on, they're balancing this whole idea of like what kind of government should they have. So they don't actually have elections. And it's what we would call an oligarchy. Make sense to you guys? All right. So Napoleon then was a field marshal, artillery marshal, meaning he was the one who used kind of like game strategy to put cannons in place and long distance cannons, and then kind of come up with battle strategy. And so by 1799, he was the most popular person in France. Now, a few things about him, okay? These are kind of important. He was born in 1769. He was not born in the mainland of France. If you look at the screen, okay, that circle that just came up, right here in the bottom right-hand corner, that's called Corsica, okay? That's where he was originally born, and he was from lower nobility, and he actually had to work his way up through the ranks to becoming, he got a scholarship to go to a military school, and then he used the chaos of the French Revolution to put himself in a better position. He's probably most well known for basically invading Italy during the French Revolution and giving there had been a long-standing promise between the Habsburg Austrians and the French Bourbons that no one would go in and take the Italian city-states that were part of the Holy Roman Empire. And so he did that, and that brought him a lot of fame and notoriety. And then he used that to become more politically active and basically use his influence to sway over the Jacobins. Okay. So, kind of an interesting story again, because he's from this little island. You think of probably the most famous French person ever. Next, maybe Louis or Marie, it's going to be Napoleon, and he was more Italian, one could say, than actually French. Now, this is a pretty cool map. This map tells the story of Napoleon. You could not even have to write anything down or look at anything else if you're interested. Okay, and so you see all of these battles in the early 1790s. Okay, and then what you're going to notice is in 1798, 1799, he goes to Egypt, and he tries to claim Egypt for the French. He actually takes his troops up to Acre, which is in the lower right-hand corner. Is successful, but then he has to come back to Cairo, where it's called the Battle for the Pyramids. Have you heard of this? Okay, I think it's in a different chapter, but at the Battle of the Pyramids, Napoleon's army absolutely crushes what are known as the Mamluks. If you remember, the Mamluks were the defenders of Egypt and of the Ottoman Empire. And it would have been all good and well, except his navy got absolutely destroyed by the British. Okay, the British said they were not going to allow Napoleon to take Egypt. Egypt had a lot of significance because if you could build a canal from right here, the Red Sea, right just south of Cairo to the Mediterranean, that could connect Egypt to Indian Ocean trade, and that could make the distance for the British trading with their crown jewel, India, much easier. Does that get made eventually? Yes, it gets made 70 years later. It's called the Suez Canal. Okay, so the British also have a better navy than the French. So what Napoleon does is a little bit of trickery here. Napoleon, the British blockade the French. Napoleon escapes around the blockade, beats the bad news back to Paris, and then when he gets to Paris, he declares himself to be basically, he throws what's called a coup d'etat. That's the French word for an overthrow, right? And he's going to basically set himself up as the governor and the government for 10 years, but he's going to use this fake term called the French consulate because he actually is going to share power, but each subsequent year, he just continues to take more and more power himself. But he's obsessed with the Roman Empire, and so this fanaticism with taking all the power like the Roman emperors had was something that he continuously did. Now, in 1802, there's a plebiscite. You guys know what a plebiscite is? Basically, a plebiscite is a vote, but it's like a kind of an unannounced vote. So, like, if we were going to have a plebiscite today, let's say one of our school board members died. That'd be a bad thing. I'm saying, like, circumstantially, right? School board member dies. They have a plebiscite, and the commoners, quote unquote, voted to make him in this plebiscite, in this vote, leader for life. Okay, and so instead of taking the name dictator or king or emperor, he takes the name first consul, which, if you guys remember going back to the Roman Republic, how many consuls did the Republic have? The Roman Republic always had 2 consuls, one who was in charge of domestic affairs and one that was in charge of international or war affairs. Now, again, he's changing the name of all these because he's not one or the other. He's just a dictator. Yeah. We'll get there. You're a little quick. All right. Then in 1804, there was another public vote, referendum, and he was crowned dictator for life, 1804. Thus, if most of you are using your head right now, you're saying to yourself, wow, they fought a long, bloody revolution, and so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of people were died, maimed, drowned in rivers, had their heads cut off, humanely and inhumanely, just to have this little guy from Corsica call himself the dictator? Yeah. That'd be cool if you were just in France and it only affected you. The thing is his reign affects like 2/3 of the world after this, which is the crazy part behind this whole story. So you can see this vote. This vote was like a Russian vote or a Chinese vote today. Okay, on the ballot there were 3 names. You were allowed to vote for Napoleon, Napoleon, or Napoleon. Which one do you choose? Oh, Napoleon. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so Napoleon and Napoleon are on the ballot. So, yeah, he wins 99.3% of the votes. In reality, he only let upper-class people with land vote, and he knew that he already had their support. Does this sound very enlightened to any of you in the room? No. That's what popularity will do. Donald Trump. Never mind. Sorry. You should vote have TV stars as presidents. Anyways. So, this isn't, don't need to write this slide down. This is just a fun fact, okay? So, he throws his own coronation party in Notre Dame in Paris, and it cost the country 8.5 million francs. So, now you're starting to think, dang, this guy's starting to act like Louis and Marie, isn't he? And he invites the Pope to this ceremony to crown him the Holy Roman Emperor. And basically what happens is, instead of letting the Pope crown him, he takes the crown from the Pope's hands and he puts it on his own head. Drama. Why? Because he does not want to be another Charlemagne. He's not going to give in to the Pope. Okay, he does swear that he will basically make Catholicism the religion for all or most, but he's not going to start any more wars between Protestants and Catholics, any of that. Okay, and he actually invites all of the people who served the church who are still alive. He invited them back into their positions after this. If you were the lucky one and you left the country during the revolution, would you have come back? No. Why? I mean, what were the chances of your head ending up in that guillotine? Pretty good. I'd say I'm pretty cool hanging out at my cousin's house for the rest of my life in Russia. I might have to eat sausages and speak German, but it's better than getting guillotined. All right. Here's a cool picture for you. What is this a picture of, Brooke? You gave her the board look. Now you get an answer. Uh-huh. The crowning of Josephine by Jacques Louis David. Okay? Now, why this is a cool picture, you can see Napoleon's sisters were forced to carry her, whatever the long part of the dress is. I forget what it's called. What is that called? The train. And they were all mad because he married this woman they thought was like basically not noble and ugly. And so he made them so that there's like disdain on their faces if you look close enough. And here's Napoleon. After he had the Holy Roman Emperor's crown put on his head, he now puts the crown on Josephine's head. Ironically enough, he'll end up divorcing her in 1810 because she can't produce a male heir for him. But she dies before the divorce. She's the king or queen of like 10 different countries because of how much he expands after that. So here's a picture of Napoleon. It was said that this coat thing that he's wearing weighed over 60 pounds. That's how much thread went into it. Okay, you can see the crown here, and so this will be the last Holy Roman Emperor. All right, so after that, you see the next 9 years what are known as the Napoleonic Wars. And basically, they're a continuation of the wars that were fought during the French Revolution. Except this time around, Napoleon is going to be vastly more successful. And he goes to war with Russia, Prussia, and Austria and defeats all three of them. Only country that he is not able to defeat is Britain due to what's called the continental system and then the blockade that the British used in return. Okay, this is an important concept. I've already started making your test. I know this question's on there, so you want to listen to me. Okay, take a look at this map. You'll see the little dotted red line. And essentially, that was where the British Navy completely blockaded any port. And so the only reason Portugal is not involved here is the Portuguese were basically a fief to the English. Like they were allies with the English. Okay, but every other country or nation state at this point was not allowed to trade with the British. And so they had to rely on France to get goods, and they lost out on a lot of global economic opportunities. And this caused the United Kingdom at this time, early 1800s, to go and colonize places like Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Canada, all these cool places. It's called Canada. You know that. Okay. And France then is kind of bogged down. And obviously this cost Napoleon a lot of money too. So what does he do? he sells 2/3 of the United States to the United States for a very low price, known as the Louisiana Purchase. You guys remember that from the middle school? Yes. Okay. So that's the blockade system, continental system, was Napoleon's basically attempt then to tell everywhere that he conquered, you're not allowed to trade with the British. So it was a back and forth system here. It ended up helping the British a lot more in the long run because they just went other places to sell their stuff and get goods. All right, let's take a look at Germany and Italy. So when he took over Prussia and the Holy Roman Empire through using military tactics, he created Germany into a state for the first time in history of the world. And it was called the Confederation of the Rhine. The Rhine is a river. Okay? And he put his cousin as the king of the Confederation of the Rhine. So you get a foreign dude, foreign French dude, that now gets to lead this first quasi-state that Napoleon creates. If you're German, what are you thinking? This isn't that cool, is it? I don't know if I really want to be involved in this guy's party. And Italy. You'll see Italy on the map. A large portion of Italy was united. So that basically the reason why Napoleon did this was he needed to have help in fighting all these wars. And he needed to have a lot of soldiers that he called the Grand Army. And so what he didn't realize was actually happening, I have it on the bottom of the slide, is that they developed national unity, or what this thing called nationalism is developed in Italy and Germany because Napoleon sets up these states to help him serve his war purposes of taking over the world. Okay, so it kind of backfires on him, but for the first time, you have a loose organization of Italy and Germany that were traditionally just small states led by their own princes. All right, other things that he did. These are pretty famous, okay? And this is why, like, historians are like 50-50 on Napoleon. He did spread this code known as the Napoleonic Law Code, which said that everyone was equal before the law. Well, everyone, that meant, like, males of a certain age. Property rights were protected, so the government couldn't just steal your property anymore. You had to give your inheritance to all your kids, not just the eldest male, so it got rid of archaic feudal contracts. You can be Protestant or Catholic, you know, you don't have to be one or the other. And I guess on the inside, looking out, this might have appeared democratic, but again, he put his family members in power in almost every place that he took over. They call Napoleon the kingmaker for that reason, because again, his extended family all became kings. Now, he also set up the Bank of France, and this is a big deal because this banking system of like having sub-regional government banks, regional banks, and then a national bank that took care of all the money is a very similar system that was set up in the United States. Okay, and France used this exact banking system until they went on the euro, which I think was like 1999. They used this system of banking that was set up by Napoleon quite a long time. All right, the other religiously, again, Catholicism was going to be the religion of most. Priests and clergy members could come back, but they didn't have their land, and no one had to pay tithes anymore. Optional. This is just another step in what we call the secularization of Europe. Yeah. That means the movement away from the church. Worldly. Secular means worldly. All right. Napoleon's biggest mistake here. You probably heard of it before. But he gets Russia on their heels, and he's chasing Russia in what is early 1812, like May, early June, and Russia is using what's called the scorched earth policy against Napoleon. Anyone remember that from middle school, Civil War? Sherman did the same thing in Georgia. His march from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia, where he burned every single farm, every single house, took all the food, and a 50-mile path in the south to basically try to destroy the southern economy. Well, Mr. Napoleon did the same thing. Well, sorry, Napoleon didn't do the same thing. What happened was the Russians, because you guys know the Russian government didn't care about the poor people, they started burning down peasant villages. Every city, all the way from the edge of what was Eastern Europe to Moscow, was burned down. In fact, they burned Moscow to the ground. So by the time Napoleon got there in the winter, not only was he starving, because you can't have a supply line that reaches from Moscow all the way to Paris, right? Two, he's fighting with a bunch of RFP soldiers that are Prussian, Austrian, Italian. They're not going to fight for him. So between the amount of deserters and then people that died due to starvation and, I don't know, hypothermia, I guess you'd call it, 100,000 people are left when he marches back to Paris in 1813. Okay? So, who was the only person to successfully invade Russia and take them over? We have a class visitor, Mr. Dickerson. Oh, who was it, class? Anyone on Zoom? You can take this too. Who is the only civilization to successfully invade and occupy the Russians?
The Han Dynasty.
No, he said the Han Dynasty. I don't even think that's a dynasty. You got it? The Mongols! Yes! Of course it's the Mongols.
When did they start naming the ice cream?
Napoleon?
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually...
Chocolate and vanilla and strawberry.
Yeah, it's not related. I looked it up. Neapolitan is how you say it. Yeah, I used to think it was spelled that way too.
Hey, bro, what's your name over here?
Sorry, Zoomers. We're a little...
Actually, you got like 3 residents in a row.
He's commenting on the fact that we have 3 students in a row that have red hair.
Oh, mine's right there.
And then he said his wife has red hair. I know. These kids don't look amused, bud.
Who?
The Zoomers.
You're too afraid to come to school, am I right?
Okay, guy.
I'm so bored.
He is so bored. Do you have your shoes on at least now?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, earlier he was walking around with white socks, dress pants, white socks.
Huh? Brooke, how come your shoes are-
All right, we're going to keep going even though, he's talking about hair in his mask in his mouth. Well,
You're weird, I'm like, man.
okay. Teaching. Because it's actually good stuff.
You feel that?
No. Hold on. So Great Britain financed Russia, Austria, Prussia, and Italy to come together to defeat Napoleon once he came back from Russia. All right. And so once he comes back, he voluntarily steps down. I say that in quotes because his army mutinied against him. And they send him to this little tiny island, if you look on this map, off the coast of Italy called Elba. I've actually been very close because this little peninsula right here is called the Cinque Terre. It's like 6 villages you can walk in between. It's pretty cool. But anyways, so he's sent to this little island, and they think that he's not going to, come back again, but he respawns. Literally respawns, and for 100 days, he marches on the government. And his army rallies around him, and Louis the 18th, because Louis the 17th died in prison, Louis the 18th, who was the acting king with the Constitution, so a constitutional monarch, flees okay, to, where did he go? I think he went to Prussia, okay, flees and leaves the, basically lets Napoleon rule for 3 months. It's unbelievable. But he raises an army. There he meets the Duke of Brunswick at the Battle of Waterloo. And the British, Prussian United Army finally defeats Napoleon. And this time they're smart enough. They send him to this little island called St. Helena, which is a British penal island. Basically, it's a prison colony. It's very small. There's some funny YouTube videos if you look it up. It's just like a one house on this island. That's it. Oh, hold on. Gosh. The Hiddles are always trying to crash the party. They would have been good friends with Napoleon. All right. Now, here's where St. Helena is. You'll notice it's a proximity to nothing. Okay, absolutely nothing. That would mean that he was not escaping that island again. Does everybody see that? The irony in that? Wow, that's a long way from anything. And there he dies, I think, within like 4 years. Like that's where the mystery is. There was cancer. He wasn't poisoned. Most people say it was like kidney and liver failure because he drank himself to death. Here's his last court painting. I think you get the picture if you see it. Doesn't look like the nice man that we witnessed earlier, does he? Not so much. So you might say, well, this is cool because he's gone, so shouldn't have anything else to deal with. Nope. He caused a lot of problems. In class, we usually try to go over what he ruled. So he put a family member in rule over every single one of these places. He basically made Poland for the first time again, since it was a kingdom. He made Germany into a place again. Austria, Italy, Holland, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, Russia, Prussia, and Spain. Oh, yeah. And these places have a few colonies, too. So what's going to happen with them? So when I said Napoleon caused some issues, these are some big issues. Okay? So the real question then is, how important was the Enlightenment? How much is it going to stick in these other places? Is France even going to accept the darn thing that they fought 10 years for? Like, what do we do? And so you basically had 3 key ideas. Conservatism, which was a return back to the way kings ruled before. Despotic absolute rule. Or you could follow liberalism, which was the idea that we should put the rights in the hands of the people. Or even better, you could eliminate government overall and have no rules. A more radical approach. Give everybody the right to vote. Yes. Yes, Lily Dole pointed out that it is not exactly how we work today. You're correct. Part of that is because when we think of liberal, we think, well, no, I think it is like it is today. Conservatism, they wanted the same. They wanted it to be the same. For liberalism, they want change. And radicalism is far left, far right. Could be either one. Good question, though. I wish we had more time. We don't. All right, so here you got a map of Europe. You've seen it already before. Basically, when Napoleon is removed from power, the rest of Europe goes, whew, thank God that happened. Let's go back to the old way it was. So they're going to usher in a period known as the conservative period, that change is going to come slowly over a long period of time. Not like it did in the United States, not like it did in France, not like it did in Haiti. Okay? All right, so where this all goes down is this place called Vienna, Austria. It's the capital of the Habsburg Empire. Remember these Habsburg people, how powerful they were? Okay, so basically 5 countries get invited: Russia, Prussia, Austria, Britain, and then France is brought in later on just because they needed someone to break the tie. Russia and Great Britain were always going to vote together, and Austria and Prussia were going to vote together due to alliances and proximity. And so they needed somebody in there to bust it up. So France is invited, and they're going to restore absolute leaders, quiet these nationalist movements, get rid of this idea that people can vote. That's their goal, okay? And they throw a big old gala, month-long party where they get new silverware for every meal, that women have to wear a new dress at every single dinner. It's crazy high European fashion. If you ever get a chance to go to Vienna, you got to check out the Schönbrunn. I think it's the Hofburg is the one in downtown Vienna. They literally show you each different night's silverware for these parties. They even made coins to commemorate this experience, and that's a bigger deal than it was today, probably. Okay, big deal. Waste of money. Totally against what the Enlightenment was supposed to be about. You guys good with that? All right, so this conservative period then is pretty much common sense, but we'll go through it. Okay, so dynastic families are put back in place. So the Bourbons are put back in place. The Habsburgs are put back in place. And there's no major wars for 50 years in Europe. Well, this was actually supposed to guarantee peace forever. There was never supposed to be another world war again. What they're not taking into account here is this whole thing called Germany they don't create. Now, censorship of rights. New ideas are going to cause revolutions. We can't have that. And they did sponsor this thing called laissez-faire economics, which we'll talk about the next 2 days. But that means laissez-faire is the French word, which means hands off. Get your hands away from it. Don't do that. Okay? And why that's a big deal is that's going to allow for the boom of the Industrial Revolution. If the government gets more involved in 1815, you don't sow the seeds for this bloody, awful revolution called the Industrial Revolution that changes the course of the world that we're still experiencing every day today. So, there you go. Now, obviously, this is not a popular decision amongst the people. So, after 20 years, the kind of the memory of Napoleon fades, and people want more participation, more protection. So, some of these liberal ideas like this: political representation, not just voting, but having working class people in Congress. Okay, laws that protect all classes, rights for workers, like if you get workman's comp. Okay, if you get injured on the job, you don't just lose your life, like you get paid. And nationalism, it's the idea that you want to unify. Okay, so 1848 is the year of revolutions that nobody's ever heard of. It's one of the most important year of revolutions in the history of the world. Okay, here you have France, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, where you've got riots break out, where you have people burning flags, we have people looting. Okay, way more destruction than anything that happened this summer. Okay, and so it causes governments to have to start to make some adjustments. Workers' rights, voting rights, nationalist movements, end of serfdom in Russia, all this is at the forefront here. Okay, so what fails? Social demands fail, basically like equal rights, that kind of stuff. Nationalist movements didn't work. Democracy didn't work. Those are gone. What did work? Serfdom, that's archaic. Okay, that hurts economies. Get rid of it, right? Because serfs can't go work in other places. You had some advancements in male suffrage. If you don't know what suffrage means, I didn't know what it meant at your age, but it means the ability to vote, okay? And then you had some new constitutions. okay, which are basic rights of the people, but most of them were conservative in nature, okay? All right, so like I said, an important year because while not much changes, all of these governments are going to realize that they either start changing now or else they're going to have another French Revolution on their hands. Does that make sense, everyone? Like, you might be able to shoot this one down, but if you don't start slowly changing or speed up the change, you're going to have a train wreck, okay? So Italy is a good example. Italy was broken up into states, like you see on the board on the left. And Italy, basically, a guy by the name of Count Camillo Cavour, who was essentially the prime minister of this place right here called Sardinia, okay? And the Kingdom of the Piedmont. These two areas right here you see are connected in light green. And so he pays this one of the coolest, most crazy looking revolutionaries by the name, and he's got a cool name, Giuseppe Garibaldi, okay, who's led by a bunch of bandits wearing red shirts and turbans on their head, or not just like cloth headpieces. And he gives them guns and he sends them into Sicily and says, I need you to move your way north. Just pick off anyone you can, anyone that resists you, and move north. His armies move from the north to the south, and they meet up in Rome. All right? And you have Italy finally unifying. Giuseppe Garibaldi says, all right, I'm done. I did my job. I don't want any credit for it. And it is Count Camillo Cavour, who's going to be the Otto von Bismarck of Italy. He's the prime minister, and the president is a guy by the name of first Italian president Victor Emmanuel I. All right? Now, the Vatican holds out, and the Vatican becomes its own country in 1929. That's the Vatican City in Rome. If you haven't been there, it's strange, but you have to have a passport to go there. It's a country inside of the city of Rome, okay? So Victor Emmanuel from Piedmont, Sardinia right here, and Giuseppe Garibaldi from the south, and Count Camillo Cavour is kind of the guy behind the whole deal. Now you got in Italy. Germany, on the other hand, okay? So after Napoleon, Germany started this tradition of trading known as the Zollverein. If you don't know what this word means, it means basically like unity. And so what the common sense part of this is Germany said to all of the German states that made up what was the Holy Roman Empire that was disbanded after Napoleon lost in 1812, they said they're not going to charge any customs on any of their railroads, no taxes, no extra taxes, and they're all going to trade together without charging anyone else more. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, in Germany, there were huge deposits of coal, and there were huge deposits of iron, which if you're using common sense, that means that they were able to make wonderful, strong railroads, and iron produces big guns. Okay? And when you don't tax each other for it, but yet you're not unified, that's kind of a weird concept. Well, that's why they unified. So Prussia is the biggest state here in the orange. You can see that. Their main rival is going to be Austria in this, what's known as the Confederation. And so Prussia basically goes out of their way to create their own confederation of states called the North German Confederation. And within a 5-year period, they defeat Austria, the Habsburgs in war. Okay? Then they take the states of Schleswig and Holstein, which are in Denmark, right here, from Denmark. And then, in an unreal fashion here, Bismarck, who's the prime minister, basically sneaks and cheats his way to getting the French king to declare war on Prussia. And so when he does that, in less than a year, Prussia defeats France and they unify in this place you've seen before called the Hall of Mirrors. Remember that from the video we just watched? Yeah.
What's the difference between
If Prussia turns into Germany, Russia turns into Russia or the
Prussia,
Soviet
Germany.
Union. Yes.
Why is it so far over?
Because they traditionally held lots of lands in modern-day Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia. My great-grandmother was Latvian, but she spoke German, and her family related themselves to being German because they were originally Prussian. Okay, so after World War I, her parents were Latvian royalty, even though they actually were considered Prussian and they thought of themselves as being Germans.
I am being serious. There was no Germany until after World War I.
No. I'm about to get there. You're just ruining the coolest part of the story. Can you just listen? Thank you. Okay, so these wars are a big deal. Okay, Prussia's the one who led these wars because Prussia was a military machine. But there's a little bit on maybe one of the more famous diplomats in the history of the world. His name is Otto von Bismarck. He's known as the Iron Chancellor. And this quote he has is one of my favorite quotes of the year in this class. The less people know about how laws and sausages are made, the better they'll sleep at night. How are our sausages made? By grinding up the nastiest piece of the pig that nobody wants to eat. And then you take the intestines of said pig and you push the intestines into or you take the nasty leftovers, you put some spices in it, you put it in the sausage, and then you cook it up, and it tastes great. Great. Yes. He did. Yeah, he did. I'll show you in a second here. So another money quote here is Germany does not look to Prussia's liberalism. That's, the foo-foo changes that they were talking about. But not by speeches and majorities will the great questions of the day be decided. That was a mistake of 1848, but by iron and blood. What does iron stand for? It's a metaphor. For what? Guns and big ones. And what does blood stand for?
Blood.
War. So did he back himself up on this? Yeah, he defeated one of the most famous, if not the most famous royal family, the Austrians. Then he took what he wanted, the ports in Denmark, and then he said, France, I got you. And in less than 6 months, they defeat the French in war. And in the Palace of Versailles, in the Hall of Mirrors, you see this guy in his white outfit. He thought he was literally, he walked on water. Yeah, he wore his military uniform and his Junker hat with the little thing hanging out up here. And they threw a big old party. He invited every German prince, okay, and the other 48 German states and Prussia all unified January 18th, 1871 in Versailles.
You ran states? Like we have?
Yeah. And so Berlin became the capital, which still is to this day. There's a lot of history there. The original Prussian capital was in Potsdam, which is a lot of history there too during the Soviet Union and World War II. And then also Germany now is 25 states. It's almost identical government to the United States. Look, you have local governments.
Federalism.
Okay, federalism. Sure, I don't teach that.
Let me try.
And the emperor, or known as German, the Kaiser, had more powers than our president had. Okay, even though there was an upper and a lower house called the Bundesrat and the Bundestag. Okay, upper and lower house. Yeah. All right, so So this is kind of a big moment in history here because if you're smart enough to figure this out, in 1919, Germany has to sign its defeat of World War I in the exact same place they unified. And there's a reason for that. If you're a punk and you unify in someone else's house that has a lot of history in it, you're asking for trouble. And so when they get blamed for everything from bad around World War I, which most of it was their fault, but not all of it, they will then get to surrender and sit in the servants' quarters and sleep in the barn house while this is all going on.
Then that springboard into World War
Yes, and then that's why World War II happened. We got our econ professor in here messing with us. So, so by 1815, remember you had that Vienna Congress of Vienna that said, oh yeah, we're going to keep all the old school people in power here, and we are not going to change anything. By 1871, Britain and Germany are by far the most powerful European countries. That's why they're going to have the most luck with imperialism. Austria, Russia, Italy are far behind. They're going to try to play catch up, especially Russia, as fast as they can. We'll get into that next chapter probably, or 2 chapters from now. And France is kind of in the middle, pretty embarrassed that they lost to Germany in a very short war. And you have the creation of 2 new states that are going to try to become empires, because you guys know how that works. Italy and Germany. All right, I did it. That was long. I'm sure you guys at home got up and went to the bathroom multiple times and whatnot. I don't blame you, but hopefully, I told you last week that it was going to be a grind to get here. The next 2 days, we're going to grind out also. Your homework. Okay, everybody listen clearly. I'm so tired of this. Your homework is to take the chapter 24, second half, notes quiz. It's 20 questions. You have the advantage of me having gone over this today, but a lot of it is on the Industrial Revolution, and some of the questions are on the whole chapter that I won't even be able to get to talk about, okay? So use your notes. Hopefully you read. That's your only homework tonight. Do any of my Zoomers have any questions? All right. If not, thank you for being here. And I'll see half of you tomorrow. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Be good.